have a record turnout for this event. We have over 160 individuals registered, with more folks showing up today to sign in on the day of the event. And that is a testament to the strength of the Federalist Society in North Carolina, and a testament to all of you, its members, for your support and dedication to this organization. So I thank all of you for being here today. At the outset, I want to take a moment to recognize that while we are all here gathered today in this beautiful hotel for a day of fellowship and enjoyment, many of our fellow North Carolinians are suffering greatly. The devastation in Western North Carolina caused by Hurricane Helene has cost many people their lives, their livelihoods, their homes, and their sense of security. Please join me in a moment of silence, silent reflection, to remember our fellow citizens who have lost so much in the last few weeks. Thank you. So for our conference today, we are fortunate to have 3 panels that will provide thoughtful discussion and spirited debate about timely issues impacting North Carolina. Our first panel will examine legal developments related to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in North Carolina. Our panelists will discuss how the Supreme Court's decision in Students for Fair Admission, Inc. versus the President and Fellows of Harvard College has impacted the way that private entities in North Carolina approach all aspects of their operations, including employment, internships, contracting, and budgeting. Our panelists will also discuss best practices developing North Carolina and what future legal challenges related to DEI programs may look like. Our second panel will focus on criminal justice reform issues both at the state and federal levels. The panelists will consider whether the federal First Step Act and North Carolina's Raise the Age Law and the Second Chance Act are meeting the expectations of those who designed them. The panel will also discuss their insights on whether further criminal justice reform is needed and what that reform might look like. And our final panel today will feature a debate between 2 candidates for a seat on the North Carolina Supreme Court. We'll be joined by the Honorable Allison Riggs of the Supreme Court of North Carolina and the Honorable Jefferson Griffin from the North Carolina Court of Appeals. They'll be joining us today to share their views on the role of our state's highest court. In addition, we'll be treated to 2 interviews with members of North Carolina's federal judiciary. The Honorable Allison Jones Rushing of the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit will join us for a keynote discussion with Supreme Court Advocate Canon Shanmugam. And later today, the Honorable Terrence W. Boyle, United States District Judge for the Eastern District of North Carolina, will sit down with his longtime friend and colleague, the Honorable James C. Dever III, also of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of North Carolina, to reflect on Judge Boyle's 40-year judicial career. But as we did last year, we're going to begin with a remembrance of a proud North Carolinian and devoted Federalist Society member who has passed away since we last gathered here. At this time, I want to welcome Phil Strack, a partner at Nelson Mullins, to offer some remarks about his friend and colleague, Tom Farr.
Good morning to you all. I'm grateful to the Triangle Federalist Society for providing this opportunity to remember a great friend, an amazing mentor, and one of the best lawyers I've ever encountered, Thomas Alvin Farr. Tom loved Federalist Society events and all events like them. He was a regular face at local Federalist Society gatherings like this one. He also loved attending the annual conference in DC. One of his favorite pictures on his office wall was of him talking to Justice Clarence Thomas, which I'm pretty sure was taken at the annual conference. He loved that picture. Many of you here probably knew or even worked with Tom at some point. If you did, you know that there are many things Tom loved over the course of the years. One thing you might know about him is his love for history and all things related to the various battles that this country has gone through, whether it be the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, and all others. Many of the pictures in his office depicted battle scenes or other significant events from the country's history. Some of you might also know that Tom was born in Cincinnati and loved his Cincinnati Bengals. But enough said on that if you know anything about the Bengals. But I think Tom's first legal love, was his practice of labor and employment law. From his time working for the Right to Work Foundation out of law school, through his years helping employers follow the law in his employment litigation practice, Tom was beloved by these clients who were fiercely loyal to him. Tom preached to his clients that they should treat employees the way the client would want to be treated. Clients often appreciated how that advice prevented a lot of legal problems and a lot of costs. But when push came to shove, Tom could litigate these cases with the best of them. He also loved the intellectual challenge of employment law, where the jurisprudence is constantly changing and evolving. Tom's intellectual curiosity and pursuit of excellence in the law was one of his defining characteristics. Tom's other legal love, as most of you know, was redistricting and election law. He will be remembered as a giant in this area. He argued Shaw v. Hunt in the Supreme Court, which began the racial gerrymandering jurisprudence, which, as you all know, carries on to this day. He brought and litigated the Stevenson v. Bartlett case, a landmark redistricting case in North Carolina. Stevenson established that the legislature actually had to follow the North Carolina Constitution in ensuring that county lines must be respected in the drawing of state legislative districts. As you can imagine, that was hard-fought litigation at a time when Democrats controlled the legislature and every other lever of power in state government. That case was brought in 2001 and finally concluded in 2004. The legislature had to redraw districts several times in conformity with the ruling. And by 2010, the principles established by that case helped form the conditions under which Republicans won majorities in the state legislature, majorities which still hold today. Tom's mantra back then was that people should select their representatives and not the other way around. At that time, the media ignored those pleas. But later, when Republicans were drawing districts, somehow the media came around to his line of argument. Tom then led the defense of redistricting in North Carolina throughout the last decade and into this decade. As with employment law, Tom loved the intellectual challenge of the constantly evolving redistricting jurisprudence. He really loved a good challenge. In fact, the last few years, we've been litigating a case out of Louisiana that's pending in the Fifth Circuit. Tom saw that case as an opportunity to write his magnus opus on redistricting and was furiously working on a fulsome outline of the brief prior to his passing. I'm happy to report that the good Lord allowed him to, in fact, complete his outline. And so Tom Farr's legacy in this area of the law is going to be felt for decades and decades to come. When it came to election law, Tom worked on every type of matter imaginable. When the Republican Party was a minority for decades in North Carolina, he sacrificially litigated at least a dozen cases trying to create a level playing field for the major political parties in this state. He worked on campaign finance matters. He helped innumerable campaigns with day-to-day election advice. He worked on helping campaigns during recounts and post-election litigation. Tom truly loved election law and all the clients he helped in those times. Another thing that Tom loved was mentorship. Tom always said that every young lawyer needs a mentor. He lamented about young lawyers who practice in ways that seemed to indicate a lack of mentorship. Mentorship was extremely important to him, and I saw personally day in and day out how valuable that was to me and other young lawyers who practiced with him. Mentorship comes in many forms. It often came in the form of red ink on your draft brief, something that we all are aware of. And for most of his career, Tom did most of his writing in handwriting on a yellow pad. Later, he would explore email and send stream of consciousness emails to the rest of us. Some of you may know about that too. His mentorship also came in the form of coaching, whether it be in the office, at depositions, or at trial. And Tom came by his mentorship abilities honestly. His mentor was Mr. Tom Ellis, who was also a giant in his own time. I remember a hearing that took place in the Stevenson case in the Superior Court of Johnson County. Tom was making an argument to the judge, and it didn't appear to be going his way. Tom, as he would, became more animated, trying to convince the judge, and Mr. Ellis, who was sitting on the bench behind counsel's table, got up and yanked Tom's suit and told him it was time to sit down. Sometimes mentorship involves telling a younger lawyer when to sit down and stop arguing. The fact is that everything Tom did was geared towards helping younger lawyers in the office become better lawyers. We need more and more of that in the profession now. Tom's mentorship focus was one of the hallmarks of his life and his practice. But perhaps Tom's biggest legal love was professionalism and civility. Tom had an overriding desire for professionalism, courtesy, and treating all people, especially opposing counsel, with dignity and respect. That is, after all, what the practice of law is built upon. It's an adversary system that requires you to zealously advocate for your clients, but not at the expense of professionalism and human dignity. Tom understood that more than most. Tom made it a priority to speak with opposing counsel in a respectful way and try to get to know them on a human level, not just as an adversary in a court fight. He yielded gracefully to adverse rulings from the court and always responded humbly when the court's ruling went his way. And this became even more evident to me after his passing, when I received an abundance of communications from opposing counsel and their clients over the years who expressed their admiration for Tom. Here's just a few of them. We heard the sad news about Tom and are sending well wishes to you both and everyone there who knew and worked with him. We always counted Tom a worthy adversary, and he was clearly liked and respected by those who knew him well. And another one, passing on condolences to you and your colleagues regarding the loss of Tom. Of course, my conversations with him were relegated to small talk, but he was always exceedingly friendly and polite. I remember him explaining his path to North Carolina. Anyways, we may not have always agreed, but our side respected him for his formidable talents in the courtroom. I would say to all the lawyers in this room that there can be no higher honor than to be spoken of in this manner by your adversaries. Perhaps one of Tom's greatest contributions to the legal profession was his keen sense of rising above the fray and treating counsel with dignity and respect, no matter who they were. And on this issue of dignity and respect and professionalism, I'd like to say a word about what Tom endured during his 2 nominations to the federal bench. To put it mildly, he was attacked, defamed, and maligned in the worst ways possible, none of which he deserved. For both nominations, Tom was rated as unanimously well qualified by the ABA, the highest ranking one can earn. But apparently in our current culture, being well qualified doesn't matter. In a different time, Tom's nomination would have sailed through upon this well-deserved accolade from his peers. But instead, he was treated as if he was just some political candidate being elected to some office, and therefore all sense of decorum goes out the window. If Tom were here today, he would tell you that's not how we should handle nominations to the federal bench, especially those that are rated unanimously well qualified. He would tell you we have to do better. I personally saw the human toll of that kind of treatment took on him. As a profession, he would say that we owe it to all Americans to give these nominations the dignity and respect they deserve, even when we may strongly disagree with any particular nominee. One of the hallmarks of Tom Farr's life and practice was his professionalism and civility towards all, even those he strongly disagreed with. The practice of law and the professionalism of all those who come after us would be immensely improved with more lawyers like Thomas Alvin Farr. I want to express again my deepest gratitude to the Triangle Federalist Society for this opportunity to remember my dear friend and colleague. And thank you all for listening.